Everybody, welcome to the Big Boys. We're back for another edition. Colorado is 2-0. Last week, Coach Reed told me, don't look too far, Tolly. Don't look too far. So I'm not going to look too far, but I'm smelling that 3-0. I'm smelling it, but we're going to get there. All right, joining us as always, he's Carl Reed. He's a college football analyst for 24/7 Sports. We got our man, the proprietor of the pregame show. He's Uncle Neely. Carl, let's kick it off with you, man. You saw the game on Saturday, a little different style. What were your immediate takeaways after the game was over, the big win over Nebraska?
You know, I thought that Deion Sanders did an excellent job of keeping his composure. Normally when a quarterback, I think he got sacked 7 times. Normally when a guy gets sacked 7 times under that type of duress, going from a week ago in the TCU game where he went almost untouched to Nebraska did a lot of things to put him in situations where they brought a lot of pressure, and he still didn't turn over the ball. That was what was interesting to me about the game, and I think that was the difference. Most quarterbacks, under the same circumstances, they throw a pick. They give a fumble away on a sack, and he was under enough pressure where that could have easily happened, but the fact that he took care of the ball, he didn't start berating his offensive line. Dylan Edwards got beat a couple times. Those weren't all O-line sacks. Dylan Edwards got beat a couple times on blitzing linebackers, a young guy. Sometimes young guys struggle with pass protection early in their careers. He didn't lose his cool. He talked to Dylan Edwards. He kept working. He stayed in the pocket. He kept pressing, and he made the big throws down the end that you need. I think that he's the MVP of the ball game, and not just because of the yards, because of the way that he kept the offense calm and under control when it could have went the other way, because it was a game for a while.
Yeah, you're spot on there, Carl. You know, one thing I loved about Shadour's performance is that the nation got to see another facet of Deion Sanders. You know, on the Big Boys, we've talked about his cerebral process into the game. On the Big Boys, we've talked about his arm strength and accuracy. But one thing you got to see this week, which typically quarterbacks and coaches naturally so want to avoid, is his physical prowess. Shedeur ain't no little boy. That's a grown man. He went through Coach Mo Sim's strength and conditioning programs, put on some muscle, put on some speed, not afraid to show and use the legs when he has to. And he had to this week. And that's another thing that you saw. You saw at TCU on a particular play or two that he stood in there, knew he was going to get hit, but still made the throw. And as you're talking about, Carl, he saw early on that they were blitzing, that they were coming at him, and it did not change his composure for the rest of the game. He didn't attack his teammates. He stood in there when he had to. And, you know, 1 or 2 of those sacks, I think he'll own, holding the ball too long and waiting on something to happen for a route to break free, you know, such as he did on that miracle 2-point conversion that was Heisman-like, running around and like, man, throw it away, get out of there. But he made a play happen. He's a playmaker. Michael Irvin was here, but you had 2 playmakers. You had Hall of Famer Mike Irvin watching the game. You had Deion Sanders as a playmaker on the field. I think in these 2 games of his Power 5 career, you have seen that what he accomplished at HBCU and Jackson State is not a fluke. The guy has a command of his offense and of all the mechanics that it takes to play at this level and even higher.
Carl, let me ask you this. Me and Neely were talking about this amongst ourselves. You know, the arm and the accuracy has carried over from Jackson State, so no surprise for people who followed Shadeur's career. But to me, and tell me honestly what you think, Carl, he looks more elusive as a runner this year than what I saw at Jackson State.
Well, I think he's probably at this level. He has to move around a little bit more. And you got to remember, he has a different OC that's asking him to do some different things. So you also have to give credence to the fact that he's not playing in the exact same system. This system is having a little more running for him. But what I tell people all the time, the biggest question I get asked all the time is, how good is Shedeur? Is he as good as everybody says? And I've actually been watching him play since the Under Armour camps when he was in middle school, and he would come and compete at the Under Armour camps. And a lot of times when you have a great player, and I think it's similar to Arch Manning being, Peyton and Eli's nephew, when they have that last name and they come from that lineage, it's easy to say, well, his daddy positioned him. They go through the same thing with Bronny James. But I think that what he's showing week after week, and he did it at Jackson State for sure, but he's also doing it now at the highest level of college football, is that he is the real deal, and he has everything it takes, from the arm strength to the accuracy to the ability to be mobile and show mobility as well.
You know, Carl, one of the things I've looked for since I've been exposed directly to Shedeur Sanders when he was at Trinity, I've looked for the thing that he needs to work on. I've looked for the flaw in his game. And one thing I will give him credit to in the offseason is every time you find something that you think he needs to be better at, it doesn't take long before he's better at it and then great at it. You know, he's not making mistakes that he would have made 2 years ago. He's not making some of the quick reads or holding the ball as long as he would have. The guy continues to grow and elevate his game with the level of play. And, you know, you talked about being under this Sean Lewis system. Here's one thing that Shedeur Sanders absolutely does not get enough credit for. He is now into his third season of college ball, and he's probably under his third or fourth offensive coordinator, but he hasn't missed a beat in performance. You don't even see that to the NFL. You see quarterbacks when they change OCs or quarterback coaches or even teams, they have a drop-off in their performance as they adapt to that new system. Well, Shedeur Sanders has done that for each one of his college seasons, and not only there's no drop-off, there's only upticks.
Carl, when you're looking at that game on Saturday, and you know more football than I do, obviously, but to me, the speed of the game looked a little different. Their offense didn't seem to have the same tempo as it did week one against TCU. Did you find that to be true? And if so, what do you think were some of the factors there?
We got to give the Nebraska defense some credit. They had an excellent game plan to start off with. Their D-line posed some problems. And anytime you can get pressure rushing 4 guys and you can drop 7, or you can get pressure with 3 guys and you can drop 8, which Nebraska was able to do, that's able to throw your timing off. And then they blitzed at the right time. They decided at the right time when to bring pressures. They did a lot of overload blitzing, putting one guy to a side more than what you have to block, and they played some of those games, and they would play some man stuff underneath that would make it hard for you to get right into your RPO stuff. So I think that you have to give them credit for some of the things they did scheme-wise, but also when you blitz a great quarterback like Shedeur, they got burnt on a couple of those blitzes also because they were able to get some one-on-one matchups on the outside with Travis and with Weaver, and that would extend some drives and some plays. So I do give Nebraska credit for being able to come out and slow them down initially, and then Shedeur was able to find it and get in his groove.
Yeah, Nebraska's defense, Coach Reed, did what they had to do. You know, they don't have the talent level juxtaposed to Colorado to go man for man every down. You know, we would just have our way with them. So you got to get the quarterback to move his feet, got to get him out of the pocket, got to make him hurry up, got to give him different looks. And that's what happened, particularly in that first quarter. You know, Mike Tyson said it best. Everybody's got a game plan until they get hit in the mouth. And this offense under Sean Lewis with Shedeur Sanders as QB1, they worked on knowing that a blitz was coming for this game, but getting out there and experiencing it in real game speed where the defensive lineman does not have to check up because this ain't practice where you don't touch the quarterback. They're coming for real. And again, shout out to Shedeur for adjusting to that and embracing it, because once he got his tempo, knowing what was coming, he was still able to find receivers, make plays happen with his legs. You know, he got a rushing touchdown, had a couple of scrambles. You know, the guy did what he had to do in face of a totally different defense from TCU. And another pinpoint to that, Tolly, when you go into TCU, and it's the first game after fall camp, you've really had about 10 days to prepare for that game. Once the season starts, you're looking at 3, maybe 4 days to prepare for a team. So what you saw take place against Nebraska, you know, that only started formulating this week. And he was able to, as his first year in the Power 5, second game of the season, with just 1 quarter of play against that defense, figure it out and then start having success.
You are watching The Big Boys. He's Uncle Neely. I'm Tolly Carr. We also got Coach Carl Reed. He's a college football analyst for 24/7 Sports. Carl, with that coaching background, man, when you go against a team and they give you some problems, how do you go back and take that film and not only incorporate into what you want to do as an offense, but see where, you know, some of your flaws or your pressure points are on your offense? How can they take that film from Nebraska and get even better?
Well, you want to know a couple of things. You want to know, is it a scheme situation? We gave up the 1 touchdown right before halftime where we were playing man. They sent the guy in motion The linebacker chased the motion guy, and they were able to run a quarterback draw. That's a scheme thing. That's not a man problem. So you're going to ask yourself again in that same situation in the second half, they didn't go man. They played a zone. They played a zone, a tight zone coverage, and that left that defender in the box, so they weren't able to run that play anymore. So that was a great in-game adjustment that they made. So you ask yourself first, is it a scheme problem? The second thing is if it's a personnel issue, those things are harder to fix. If it's a personnel thing, maybe your DN is better than my offensive tackle. Maybe your D tackle is better than my guard. You continue to practice. You continue to go through repetition. You just want to make sure when you come out of the film that you're not having a scheme issue and that you're not having an effort issue with your players. Everything else can be corrected. And I think that they made some great adjustments from a scheme standpoint in the second half, which they were able to blow the game open when they did those things.
Yeah, any coach in American football, not soccer when I say football, but it's probably the same. Any coach worth a damn will tell you the biggest gap in improvement that you see is between week 1 and week 2. That's when you really start to know who you got, what they can do. You know, effort is one thing, like Coach Carl Reed is talking about, but personnel-wise, just ability-wise, you know, do I have this guy in the right place? And now let me start even looking at this recruitment for next season and also coaching the guys up behind him and coaching him up as the season goes on. But I'll tell you this, Coach, and you and Tyler, let me know if you disagree. Once you get to week 2, after week 2 that is, and you start getting into week 3 and week 4, this is when you really see how much coaching matters, because now other teams have film on you. So you better believe that the USCs, the Oregons, the whoever, they're going to watch what Nebraska did in that first quarter and see how they can adapt it with their personnel, because maybe they'll have more success than Nebraska had with it. But here internally at Colorado, you have to look at what Nebraska did well and come up with schemes and personnel changes and coaching up to make sure it doesn't happen again. When you roll into TCU week 1 or those people that played a week 0 game, nobody has a lot of information yet because the turnover in college football is at an all-time high. You're looking at sometimes completely different teams than even the spring game to week 1. But once you start getting into the season, you have film, you have game. Now coaches have to get in there and make those adjustments and get ready for teams, making the assumptions of what those teams are doing based on what they saw as well.
When you talk about personnel, Carl, talk about what you see from the wide receiver position, because it looks like there's a number of guys that could really step up and be that lead dog at wide receiver, and they really just seem to be very versatile and, for my eyes, very deep at that position.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, over the course of this offseason, as the shift started to change with the transfer portal and the roster, that has been the position that Coach Prime has been the most excited about. When I would talk to him, whether it be on the phone or when I come to practice, and we're talking about the team and how everybody's looking, he would say every single time, this receiver group is special. Obviously, we know about Hunter, but you got guys like Horn, you got Weaver, you got a really good group. Then Dylan Edwards adds a lot in the passing game as well out of the backfield, and you got a special quarterback. So from that standpoint, and you got guys who can do multiple things. You got guys who can line up outside. They can line up in the slot. They can run intermediate routes. They can run between and outside the hashes, the deep part of the field. It's a very special and versatile group, and the offense gives them a lot of options.
And in those options, Carl, you still haven't seen everybody yet. You know, you still got Javon Antonio, number 4, a kid who was in Hinds County with me, came from, Hinds County Junior College, went on to finish his degree, and is now here at Colorado, nursing a little small injury, is going to be in that lineup, in that mix. And this is a guy, when he's standing next to Terrell Owens, he's looking down on him. Like, this is a big receiver that they don't have footage or film on yet, and he's going to make that impact as well. But Shedeur Sanders, is again that point guard. He's going to find the right guy in the right space, and you're going to continue to have multiple guys, varying guys, who have more than 100 yards per game because of the acumen of the quarterback, the relationship with receivers, and what Zay Weaver, number 10, is doing here at Colorado is already proven to be special, and he's going to be a leader in yards. And just wait till you see him on special teams eventually, because he is fast and can make people miss. He is going to be a special receiver in the nation, and you're going to start hearing his name for postseason awards.
Carl, when you look at the recruiting possibilities that now exist, you got Fox, big noon kickoff. They might as well just rename that the Colorado pregame show, because their pregame has been about Colorado all season long. Will be so next week. You got College Game Day that's going to be there. I mean, Colorado has become like, hey, this is the capital of college football right now. It feels like overnight, no disrespect to, Georgia, Alabama, USC, all the attention, all the eyes, all the money, like it's all right now happening in Boulder.
Well, I think the main reason why is because everybody's in a state of shock. Remember, the narrative has started to change, or it has changed. Before, it was coming off a Celebration Bowl loss and back-to-back years. Coach Prime is finally going to meet his match. You're going to have all of these X and O gurus. All of these staffs are going to be able to out-coach him. Sonny Dykes, Matt Rule, they have 20 times the coaching acumen that he has. And so that was the agenda. That was the narrative. But look at how the narrative has changed. After you go beat TCU, who played for a national championship game, and you beat Nebraska, now it's, TCU and Nebraska aren't that good anymore. How about this? Maybe the guy at North Carolina Central is just a really good coach. Maybe Trey is just a really good coach, and he also belongs at that level, right? Maybe Buddy Pugh was one of the greatest coaches of our generation, and look at the guys that he's produced that have come off his staff. Coach Prime would talk to me all the time and say some really good coaches in the SWAC. We have this narrative that certain schools with certain coaches are well coached in their discipline. And that's not always the case, but that's the narrative that gets put out there. And so I think what Coach Prime is showing you is that he's a pretty good football man himself.
An absolute genius when it comes to not only X's and O's, Carl, but just the management and operations of an entire football program, from the marketing, the branding, to what happens on the field, to what happens in strength and conditioning. Coach Prime's fingerprints are on it all. But I'll tell you this, Tolly, as it relates to recruitment, as it relates to branding and exposure, when you look at Big Noon Kickoff 2 weeks in a row, you look at College Game Day coming the third week with Big Noon as well, you look at the potential for these same national broadcasts to meet us on the road at our opponent's location just because of that Coach Prime effect. When that lines up with recruiting, and it lines up with this new age of being able to use the transfer portal, and you look at what else is happening in college football, keep in mind, you just had Alabama loss, and they sat there with a guy believing he could contribute but didn't get opportunity. You look at what happened with LSU versus Florida State. There's a guy there believing he could contribute but didn't get the opportunity. Those guys are watching Big Noon Kickoff. Those guys watch College Game Day. They watch what's happening in Colorado. And when you get to postseason and that portal is opened up and recruiting is really underway and signing day is approaching, watch what happens in Colorado again with a number one class, a top class, because people are going to want to play for Coach Prime because they see what happened in Colorado in 9 months, just 2 games in, and they're going to see what he's building and how they can fit into it. It's going to be a floodgate here as far as who he can get in and upgrade your talent at positions.
And the people at Colorado, the regents and all the fancy titles that make decisions, they are no fools. I was watching the game, obviously. Coach Prime's got his almonds commercial. He's got Aflac. And then I see the commercial for the University of Colorado. And the entire theme for this commercial, guys, I'm sure you saw it as well, was, hey, we're in a prime location. We have prime classes. Like every sentence was like prime, prime, prime. And then at the end, you got Coach Prime. He wasn't even in the commercial, like as far as shooting. It was just like some B-roll of him. But they are all in. And that's the way to do it, man. I'm sure there's board of trustees and Billy Bobs and people all over like, man, why didn't we roll the dice? Why didn't we believe? Now they're seeing it.
Well, I think Tolly, to go with that is what it has taken to be a coach or get some of these jobs in the past is different. You're in a completely different era now with transfer portal and with the NIL. You better go get you somebody who knows how to deal with human beings, who knows how to recruit, who knows how to deal with players. I ask this question all the time. What coach on the staff is more important? Is it the guy that can lock himself in a dark room and draw plays on the chalkboard? Or is it the guy who can reach into the hearts of men? The guy who can reach into the hearts of men and get them to play inspired and get them to understand their true potential, that's the most dangerous guy. And I do believe you're going to start to see a change in the way that these administrations hire coaches.
Absolutely. And that change in standard is being a catalyst of Deion Sanders. When you look at his pregame speeches, man, when you look at his morning practice speeches, when you look at what he says to the media about loving and protecting his players, what mama ain't gonna want to send her son to be under the tutelage of a guy like Deion Sanders? Because here's what the truth is about college football. 95% of them ain't going pro, man. I don't care where you are. But can you become a pro at life? Do you leave a better person? Can you become a professional in whatever industry you choose because of the exposure and relationships that your head coach brought to the table and poured into you? And there's no better place than Colorado. There's no better place than under Deion Sanders. When you put those two things together, it becomes an exponential impact of what's going on in these young men's lives. And people get to see it every day on YouTube channels and on Instagram and from player testimonials, that it ain't smoke and mirrors, that it is a sincere, conscious effort to build more than just a football player, but to build great people.
You know, here's one thing I want to get the hypotheses from you guys. One of my friends on Facebook, and you know, probably a million people have either thought the same thing or posted the same thing. But this is a guy. He's a college professor. He's probably 70 years old, if I had to guess. But he posted, "I can't understand why all of a sudden I care so much about the players at the University of Colorado." You know, I watched football all day yesterday, and most of the games I just watched to see the talent that was on display. There's something about Deion Sanders, whether he was at Jackson State or Colorado, there's this magical thing that you just care about the players. You feel like this emotional attachment. What do you think that is? Why does it go from just, hey, these are prime athletes on display to, man, I really care about these guys?
Well, Tolly, I'll hop on that one if you don't mind, Coach Reed. Because being here firsthand, you know, Coach Prime understands narrative. He understands truth telling. He understands character development and storytelling. You know, it's almost like a Spielberg directing a movie. And so what happens is you start to care about these young people because you've gotten to know these young people. It's not just a highlight reel on SportsCenter. You know, you see sit-down interviews with them that come from internal sources in the program. You get to see who they are as a person, meet their family, where they came from before they're here, all the stories and nuances that go along with it. And you begin, just like in a great movie, you begin to care about the character. And you so much so, you know, Carl, when I'm interviewing Amari Hardwick at the game this past Saturday, hell, I called him Ghost because he made me believe Ghost was real and he was a person. And you see that same thing, but it's not fiction here. It's not narrative framing. These are real life stories. And Coach Prime, people always know the gold jacket, but we forget about, man, his 14 years in broadcasting with the NFL Network and others, and how he knew how to get the story out that was also one that was palatable to the athlete versus some kind of clickbait stuff where journalists would just run out and kind of, hit athletes in the back door. He knows how to get buy-in for both sides to create a beautiful story. And that's why you watch the game, Tolly, and that's why you care so much about the person, because I'm telling you, I've seen you interview Shedeur Sanders, but you feel like you know Shedeur Sanders much greater than just seeing his highlights or your interviews with him.
Neely, you're absolutely right. You rooting for the kids because you know him. He's allowed the cameras to be in there and put content out in an unprecedented way. All of the guys are known. Everybody is watching Well-Off Media and Neely's channel, the pregame show, all day because they want to inhale that content. And you're talking about the show on Amazon Prime. So you care about people that you know better. And he's allowed you guys, everybody in the world, inside access to what's going on with his program by letting the cameras be in there in a way that most coaches wouldn't even consider.
I mean, what?
And Carl, he does
distractions, right?
Go ahead,
These
Carl.
are distractions. These are distractions. We can't have this.
That's what the football manual would tell you. That's what the president of university's guide to being a president book would tell you. But Deion Sanders, just like he tells you with clothes, I don't follow fashion, I create fashion. I am style, I don't follow style. It's the same thing with branding and marketing, his programs and what he touches. He ain't afraid to show you what's going on the inside. And it is what is completely countercultural to college football, because most times there are things taking place you don't want people to see. So when HBO came out with Hard Knocks, they were scrambling to find somebody to cover. Now every NFL team is, hey, pick us, because they see what happens from the exposure of it. It does not get in the way when you're a professional. Tolly, you're there in the studio, and we're here remote, and we all had lives before we sat down to do this show. And it didn't get in the way because we're professionals. So Coach Prime creates the atmosphere. It's like, hey, man, you got to be able to do more than one thing at a time. If all you can do is play football and football only, that's the only way you'll be successful, you're not going to be successful in life. So we're going to put things on the plate that require a person to be able to go to class, to be able to play football, to be able to do an interview, to be able to go to the boosters luncheon and make remarks on behalf of the team. He is making professional men and women throughout this program in all levels and facets of it.
Yep, because I'm surely going to cut the grass as soon as we are done right here. Multitasking. Carl, let's talk about the game coming up. A lot of people out there might start peeking ahead. Oh, we got USC. Oh, we got Oregon. Cannot overlook Colorado State, right?
Don't peek ahead. Don't look ahead. It's an old coaching thing, but take it 1 week at a time. You have some people whose jobs is to look ahead, and those are the analysts in the football department, the guys that are coaching, breaking down film, but they're not involved in the week-to-week. They work a week ahead. So a lot of analysts to do their job, but fans and everybody lock in on Colorado State. Night game, I believe, Saturday night. Lock in, enjoy the night game, and then let's talk about the game next week.
Well, Carl, I'm going to throw my analyst hat on. I'm going to even throw my I told you so hat on, and I'm going to give you an I told you so early to everybody out there watching the big boys, because all the way back in July when I saw them come off of spring ball and got to see the strength and conditioning program happening and we got to fall camp, I told anybody who would listen, and believe it or not, Carl, a lot of people don't listen to Old Navy, but I told everybody who would listen, we're going to Oregon 3-0. We are built to beat TCU. We are built to beat Nebraska at home. And I know Colorado State is an in-state rival, and it's going to be a tough game and nothing to look past. But I'm checking that game. I believe Colorado gets that game, and then we get into the true measuring sticks of where we are and where we need to get to, because now you go into those programs that have historical representation and historical year after year. They're in those top 15s and top 10s and even 5s. And so I'm looking forward to the challenges. But you're right now. We got to play this game first. The goal is to go 1-0 each week. Colorado State is up next. But as that analyst, as that broadcasting guy, I do kind of look ahead and go like, hey, man, can you imagine going to Oregon with a first-year Power 5 coach coming from an HBCU, bringing HBCU staff and talent, and he's 3-0 when everybody said he would be 0-3? Going to be a phenomenal story.
Absolutely, one that we will watch very closely. Neely, I'm gonna let our guest have the final word. We're gonna be polite here today. Carl,
he ain't no guest. He's a co-host.
I know, but
he lives here, man.
I know, but Neely, me and you, I gotta.
Hey, Tyler, I get it. Somebody has got to fix the plate first. So we can't fix it at the same time. So go right ahead, Coach.
Coach, you're going to be headed up. You're going to watch practice a little bit this week. Get inside the program again. What are some things now that you've kind of seen them, from afar and winning, and now you're going to go back and visit some more? What are some things you're really going to focus on when you go visit this week?
Well, I won't be there this week. I'll be there the week of the USC game.
All right, I'm a week ahead.
but just when you go into a situation now that you're the favorites in games, instead of being somebody who everybody's looking past, it's a different mentality and it's a different mindset for you. So you just want to make sure the kids are staying focused and that they don't get complacent as the wins start to come, because it is a different mindset, because now people aren't looking at you as underdogs anymore. Now there's a new expectation for you to win every time you go out there. So seeing the mental part of how that is handled.
All right. Well, we appreciate it. He's Carl Reed, college football analyst from 24/7 Sports. You can check out his work there. Uncle Neely. Catch him at thepregameshow.com, as well as our YouTube channel. Keyword is The Pregame Show. I'm Tolly Carr from Atlanta. This is The Big Boys.